excited to talk about some building blocks with you for these really important milestones of vocabulary and perspective, because kids can sure get there. I'm seeing evidence of it daily in my office. So we're going to give you really kind of a couple months of counseling quickly in these building blocks. These are some of the things we use daily in our offices. So I'm going to start with the building block, and you all, you got to kind of hang in there with me on this one for a minute, because I work primarily with girls. We talked about that 1 to 10 scale. I call it in my office a dramamometer because that's what it feels like. There's a whole lot of drama that I hear about, on a daily basis in my office. So we're going to go back to that 1 to 10 scale. I see more and more kids today who live life at 10. And we know as grown-ups, most of life really happens in the 2 to 7. And when we live life at 10, we all know folks who live in that kind of intensity, and it makes it harder for all of their relationships as grown-ups. And so we want to help them come up with this scale. We won't call it a dramamometer to them, but we internally can call it a dramamometer. And so what I do with kids is I start with helping them define their 10. And then I want to listen and go back to the scale. So helping them define their 10 would be, if you have a child who lives at 10 a lot, what I want you to do in a calmer moment with them, I want you to explain the scale. Talk about 1 to 10. I'll even have kids in my office literally draw one, and they'll come up with different points on the scale. What would a 2 be for you? What would a 6 be for you? What would a 10 be for you? And even it can help to say, what's an appropriate response for each of these numbers? Now, for so many kids, a 10 would be losing a parent, losing one of their closest friends, the hardest thing they can imagine happening developmentally. So we want to do that in a time when they're calm. And then when your child who lives at 10 gets in the car after school, and like they will inevitably say, this is the worst day I've ever experienced in my whole life, you can listen with a whole lot of empathy. Sounds like a really tough day. Yeah, that sounds so hard. What number do you think it was on your scale? Now, not sarcastically, it can be easy to all of us to fall into that, but just genuinely, what number do you think it was on your scale? And I can't count the number of times I've done that with kids, and they've said something like, it felt like a 9, but I guess it really was a 6. That's what we want for them. And sometimes they'll say that to me angrily. You're right. It felt like a 9, but it was a 6. That's okay. Automatic perspective. That's what that scale does for them. So that dramamometer really is one of the most important building blocks we can give them when it comes to vocabulary and perspective. So that would be first. The second would be the time and space and coping skills continuum. We want kids to have all three. Before we get to that, though, I want to say that in all of my years of counseling kids, I would say the number one complaint that kids have about their parents is they try to fix it. I think we're trying to do it for them, trying to help them work through whatever it is, rather than giving them time and space and coping skills, which really can change the course of things for them. And so we want to start with giving them time to self-regulate. And normally the course of things is that a child will act out, and then we will give them a consequence. I need your tablet for 15 minutes. I want your car keys. You got to go to timeout, whatever it is, you're grounded. We'll give them a consequence in hopes that next time they'll think, ooh, last time I did that, I got in trouble. So I think I'm going to control myself now and not get there. Now, how often does that really work? Not so much. And so we are huge fans of warning systems for kids, giving them time to self-regulate, to find perspective, because when we give them a consequence after the fact, we're regulating them. When we give them some kind of warning, we're giving them an opportunity to regulate themselves, and that's what we want. And so giving them time. What I'll do often in my office is I'll have a family come up with a code word. So it can be anything. It could be watermelon. It doesn't matter. I had 2 girls who would sing Let It Go to each other, sisters. It can be anything. And so in that moment, when you can tell your child is moving up the scale, then you say watermelon, or your kids can even say watermelon. And then they're going to have a few moments to regulate their own emotions. So we want to start with time to self-regulate. Then we want to give them space to go and have regulation, have the opportunity to regulate those emotions. David, in our book, Are My Kids on Track, even calls it the space, which I love that. I was talking with a family about that yesterday in my office and creating a space for the kids to go. So when you then say watermelon, they get to go to this corner of their room or their playroom or a place that you've created and come back down from 10, work themselves back down. And something I want to say, again, respectfully, that inevitably happens in my office is I'll go through all of this, even in a counseling session, a family counseling session, and we'll talk about the code word. And then they will get to the moment, have this heated moment, and the parent or the child will say, watermelon. And can y'all guess what the parent will say? The parent will say, don't you walk away from me. Which, I get it in the moment. You feel like they need to talk through it. The reality is when we're really angry, none of us get to healthy choices. None of us have healthy, appropriate conversations. When our amygdalas, the fight or flight part of our brains have taken over, we're just not going to get there. And so watermelon, and let them go to the space. So give them time. Give them space, then they do need to come back and talk through it with you. And then third, give them coping skills to move toward resourcefulness. We want to help them take that emotion to something constructive. And I think probably 25% of my time with families in my office with kids is just helping them come up with a list of coping strategies. I was meeting with an adolescent group of girls recently, and this one girl was really struggling. I was worried about her, and I said, I want you to pull out your phone, and we're going to come up with a list right now of things you can have handy that are a list of coping strategies. And one of the other girls said, can we all pull out our phones? They all need them. We all need them, you all. And you can even have the list hanging up in the space. So some of my favorites are, boys have a lot more physicality to their emotions. So having them have one of those bop it kind of things so that they can punch sometimes. I love those enormous clipboards. And so they can have markers and they can draw all over the clipboards. They need journals. They need a feelings chart hanging up in the house. I can't tell you how often over the years I've sent families home from my office by way of U-Haul to buy those giant things of bubble wrap and letting them just pounce on the bubble wrap when they're frustrated. You can have a mini tramp. There are so many things you can put in the space, but they need coping skills in that space because we want to help them learn healthy, appropriate ways to come back down from 10. I feel like I'm still learning coping strategies in adulthood. And so you all, those things, time, space, coping skills, having a sense of a scale, I think all of those are only going to promote more health for the rest of their lives from an emotional standpoint. So we really want to get those building blocks in place now. I don't care how old your kids are, it is never too late to go back and instill some of those building blocks today.